This week, something different. We've sent these two out in these two cars to see just how good they are. We are on the farm and we've got two fantastic cars and two reasonably decent blokes. Rob?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And I'm going to leave you two talk about the Rugged X Toyota Hilux and the Nissan Navara N-Trek Warrior.
That's it.
And that's a mouthful. All right, boys, take it away.
Thank you.
Our 4-hour drive along the M5 began in Sydney. We reached Bathurst, the town known for gold and racing, and then Orange, another small town best known as a wine region. And after another few hours, the tiny town where we stopped for coffee. The historic town is achingly beautiful with old buildings from a bygone era. The town is beautifully preserved. And after a short drive, we turned up at our digs. This part of New South Wales is known, of course, for sheep. Our host was shearing sheep that had recently been brought to him in the back of, guess what? You guessed it, a Hilux. And what had been a dusty several years was suddenly broken by a series of rolling storms. And what had been fine dust suddenly became this claggy, horrible clay. The cars have excellent off-road capability and in four-wheel drive mode handled this kind of track very, very well. And believe me, driving through that kind of mud is fun. You just don't want to have to be the one to clean the cars. There are many, many gates and many puddles, and this beautiful farm is inhabited by just one person. It's hard to really appreciate the isolation of places like this, with some parts of Australia being hours, if not days away from help if something really goes wrong. Luckily this place is just 20 minutes from town. That's still a very long way to go for a pint of milk when your driveway is 2 miles long. The views are to die for, and this part of New South Wales, though it has been dry for a long while, is still beautiful in an eerie kind of way. This is what these cars are made for, but pretty soon we were on a very rocky, muddy, very high hill.
David, I've got the Nissan N-Trek Navara, the Nissan Navara N-Trek Warrior.
That's easy for you to say.
It is, no, not really. And you have?
The Hilux Rugged X Toyota.
Excellent.
Now, mine's pretty good because it's got a very solid front, almost rhubarb-ish type of bumper bar.
Mine's got a steel bar on the front that is actually integrated into the body and replaces, rather than add on the front, the original bumper bar.
Mine sticks out. Mine's macho.
And that reduces the approach angle.
Ah, okay. I have lights. That stick here.
I have lights too.
Ah, yeah, but that's ostentatious, really, isn't it?
Well,
sticking up like that, but that's all right.
But it still works.
It fits you.
I've got fog lights.
So have I. I've got fog lights as well on there. And engines and that are pretty consistent.
They are almost identical in power and torque output.
Yeah. Tyres. I have all-terrain tyres.
I have all-terrain tyres too, but mine are a larger diameter and slightly wider, which gives a better lift, and the revised suspension is actually tuned for these tyres. What else have you got on the front there?
I've got a title.
Mine's on the side.
Now I've got recovery hooks.
I don't need recovery hooks.
You remember we talked to the managing director,
Yep.
and we're saying, you know, people argue about $500 about the new car price,
Yep.
and then they go out and spend 20 grand.
That's it.
You know, and your point is they might just jack it up to the maximum they're allowed, but what does that mean to the specifications of a car?
Well, it actually changes the ride and handling dynamics of the vehicle and puts more stress on some of the joints and everything in there. And so what Nissan has done is they've limited the lift to about 40 mil, whereas a lot of people do a standard 50 mil lift.
Yeah.
For that very point, and it doesn't make, actually there's more ground clearance in this than there is in this. So this is, I think, 270 plus, this one, or 268 or something. This one's 251 mils. Yeah. But what Toyota has done, they've just added a whole lot of stuff on top of it, which is typical things that people put on there, but more as an aftermarket type stuff. Like you've got a snorkel, which this one should have. Doesn't have, but should have, and that was one of the things I asked about.
We also have a fair number of road safety things. I've got adaptive cruise control and lane departure warnings and assistance. I think that helps get to the place more comfortably but doesn't help necessarily when you're off-road, but it helps get there.
True. The Navara is missing some of those safety features which are now becoming standard and people are expecting to have on the utes. Things like blind spot monitor, autonomous emergency braking, lane keep assist, that type of stuff. And unfortunately the vehicle that was the segment leader was the Holden Colorado. That is now no longer.
Yes, of course.
So it's now for the others to play catch up to where that was.
It's hard to compare them. I drove this coming up over the mountains, and so there was a lot of twisty roads, and it highlighted that it was a bit truck-like in its feel and handling. But then I drove this one out on the more flatter areas, so it's a bit hard for me to compare them. But you've just got to watch that you're still driving something that is, you know, still got a little bit of derivative from a truck-like rather than a pure car.
True. You'll find with this, with the integrated suspension and the changes that they've done to that, it's a variable compression rate, if you like. It's a lot better on corrugated dirt roads, and while it's got a more aggressive tread pattern, which you do feel when you're driving, it is actually more compliant on the dirt road. So it's aimed very much more on that dirt road driving and four-wheel road driving. This has got all terrains, but they are more towards the highway road end of the spectrum of all terrains. This is definitely designed for more off-road, but if you have a look at both of these, they're now all the treads are full of mud because it's just that clay stuff that sticks and all that type of stuff.
You would say that this is a little bit heavier on the steering, yet it's not heavy. It's a little heavier, but not heavy. It's not as if you're having to fight it.
Yeah, and it's only noticeable if you're driving back to back. There's a couple of other different features, so let's have a look at those. Okay, the first thing you notice is that while these have, the Navara has, I think it's 270, 70, 17 type tyres, the Toyota has 265, 65, 17 tyres. This actually requires an extended flare to allow it to sit within the parameters of the vehicle and not make changes to the suspension dynamics, whereas those will fit within the standard vehicle extremities.
What about these rails? Now, I like to have your step-up things because, my wife and that would have trouble getting into the high car without them. These you would not want to try and stand on.
Well, no, they're more what you call the rock sliders. So if you're going over, some rocks, they'll just slide over the top and they'll actually take a bit more pressure than these will. So that's
dirtier strides getting out of them?
Your dirtier strides on both of them.
Let me put it to you another way. You do dirtier strides getting out.
On both of them, absolutely.
Now, they both tow 3.5 tonnes.
Yes.
Mine has a load weight of 300 kilograms.
Yes.
Yours is a bit higher. Now, of course, we've got a plug, but you have a particular feeling about the location of the plug, the electronics that you might link to a trailer.
Absolutely. You want to have that on top of a metal bar so it gives it some sort of protection here, because quite often you'll find that that'll smash on rocks as you're dropping off over, and we'll have a look at the Nissan in a sec. The other thing you've got is the
recovery path.
Rear recovery points, which is excellent really, and you've got the
step.
The rear step. What's inside your tub?
My tub is, now I do have, well, anchor points, but they're sort of not down enough, are they?
No, they're halfway down.
So you can't tie it down, you tend to
tie it across, absolutely.
And you've got more adjustment to it.
We'll have a look at that in a sec.
Now, you've got a smaller rear end.
Thank you.
This one looks a bit longer.
First time that's ever been said.
Absolutely.
This one looks a little bit longer, but it's actually not much. I looked up the figures. In the back bed area there's only an extra couple of inches, although sometimes that can be helpful.
True.
Yeah.
Your sports bar actually will carry a load of 75 kilos, but you don't have a brake light. Let's have a look at the Nissan. Okay, the Nissan itself has the especially designed tow bar because of the wider tyre that the Coopers are running. So they had to redesign the tow bar to fit those in still underneath. Now, my first impression of this was that I was going to knock that or drop that off rock because it is a really low departure angle. But the good thing about this is they've also got the 7-pin plug mounted on top of the metal protector. So anyone who's a decent four-wheel driver will always have that mounted on top. We have got the step, as you said, but it sits a bit higher. Now, the good thing here is that the tie down points are actually low, so you can tie down, and you've also got these really handy rails across the top, so that they can use to also tie things down. We've got a 12-volt plug in the tub here, which is exceptionally handy. This really is a sports bar, so just for show only, but it does have the brake light up the top there. So there's a little bit of difference between the two, a little bit of quid pro quo.
You can really see that as really just tacked on there, really, isn't it? You know, so, whereas
that goes right down into the body. That's the One of the advantages of having it rain today, when it's been so dry, is that we found some puddles to play in. And
that's a good line.
Yeah,
that's a great line.
Well, that's pretty much for the comparison for these two utes. You've got the Hilux Rugged X, where Toyota has taken the approach of basically taking the vehicle upmarket. They've added extra features to it. They've added a lot of things that people would want to add aftermarket to it. But at the end of the day, it's still a Hilux, and that's a good thing because Hiluxes are really good off-road. They have a lot of aftermarket accessories that you can put onto them, and they really do have a great reputation. Few years in the wilderness, but they really do have a great reputation. And it was retested for 5 stars just recently. Important thing is for four-wheel drivers, it's got a rear diff lock standard. This is good. This is actually slightly better. And the reason why it is slightly better is because the accessories that they've added to it, the modifications that they've made, have all been designed to be integral to each other in a symbiotic. So they all work in synchronicity with each other. And you really do notice that. It's marginal, but you really do notice that when you drive the two of them back to back. Hilux is good, this is better. The level of comfort and compliance in this vehicle, especially when you're doing some heavy four-wheel driving or you are doing a lot of dirt road driving, this actually, it's not so much the fact that it'll do it, it's the degree of comfort that allows you to do it in. The two vehicles are almost identical in price, they are almost identical in power and torque output. They are aimed at exactly the same market segment, and if you bought either of them, you will be happy with your vehicle. This also has rear diff lock, it has seat warmers, but it's also missing some of the safety features of the Hilux.